Having the right workbench is key to every project that you'll ever build. In this video, we're building a Roubo-style workbench rooted in centuries-old design principles. It's heavy, it's sturdy, and it's built to last. I'm also excited to introduce PlanCrafted, a brand new platform that I've been developing. It lets you design custom woodworking plans to your exact specs. Head over to PlanCrafted.com to design your own workbench. You can see its weight, plan out your materials. You can even check it out in your space. You'll get a detailed PDF with dimensions, cut lists, assembly diagrams, and everything you need to build with confidence. My bench is 96 inches long by 24 inches wide by 32 inches tall and weighs about 450 pounds. But you can tailor your workbench to your body and your workspace. Because this build has multiple customization options, feel free to jump ahead to the next timestamp if you don't plan on building that specific feature. With that intro out of the way, let's get started. Every plan comes with its own set of cut diagrams, so you don't have to worry about how to place your cut to best utilize your material. My bench project calls for 6 sheets of 3/4 inch plywood and 1 sheet of 1/4 inch plywood. Personally, I think the easiest way to cut down plywood sheets is to just lay them on the floor. I use a 1-inch sacrificial foam sheet that I first lay down, and I do all my cutting on top of that. A track saw is my preferred tool to break down these sheets. If you don't have one, any straight edge and a circular saw will also do the trick. And you can use these methods to break down pieces into more manageable sizes and then run them through the table saw. To stay organized, I recommend jotting down each label on the part as it's being cut, and that way you can reference it later. The next step is to assemble the top from your pile of cut parts. First, I like to put down a drop sheet to catch any glue drips, and since I don't have a workbench yet, I'll be using a pair of sawhorses, and these ones work very well. They can be made for the cost of 5 2x4s. They stack, you can toss them when they're done, or repurpose them for another project. For all of the glue ups in this build, you're gonna need at least 1 gallon of glue, some method of effectively applying that glue. I recommend a spreader or a roller, and you're gonna need many clamps. I recommend 12 at a minimum for a bench like this, which is 8 feet long. I chose to go with a split top workbench, which means I'll have 2 equal width sections that make up the top. I already have 1/2 assembled here, which I can use to show you how this bench relies on this laminated construction to build these mortise and tenon joints. If you chose to go with a single solid piece top, the construction of this is very much the same. You'll just keep gluing up one continuous piece. The dimension diagrams that come with your plan should have all the dimensions required for all assemblies, but it is handy to have pieces like a leg piece so that you can use it to index your parts and get your spacing correct. Now you can glue up as many pieces in one session as you feel comfortable with. I like to glue up 1 row at a time when I'm first starting off and going around the joints, and then I jump to 3 or 4 at a time when they're just single pieces. When applying your glue, make sure to get complete coverage and not get it inside the joints. This will avoid having to clean that up later on. Now there are a few tricks to prevent pieces from shifting and sliding while you're clamping. One method is to hammer in a finishing nail on both ends of the piece and use side cutters to trim off the excess. And another useful method is to use table salt to add some water-soluble grit during clamping. I find the use of the salt technique combined with having a spare clamp to keep things in line works very well. One tip to note is that it's easier on your arms and your tools to chisel off the glue before it's fully cured, maybe about an hour or so. No matter how precise your gluing technique is, you're going to end up with small differences in height across the top and some glue to clean up. Resurfacing the bottom side of the top is completely optional, and that can be done now using a jack plane and or a belt sander. As a quick reminder, if you plan on incorporating a Deadman, make sure you include this track while laminating all the top pieces together. If, like me, you had forgot to do that, you can always route this track after the fact. So you may have noticed that my bench has some small details on one end. That is to accommodate a bench-crafted tail vise. If you are not installing a tail vise, feel free to skip ahead to the next section. Now you can install a tail vise more traditionally using bench-crafted's instructions, or you can take advantage of the laminated construction of this bench and cut pieces one at a time and then glue them up with the cuts already in them. Before we can fit the tail vise end cap to the end where the vise is being installed, we need to square off that end using a saw or a plane. All right, so this is the end cap here for the tail vise. It's assembled using very much the same techniques as the top. You're just laminating, in my case, 5 strips together. The next step here is to drill 5 mounting screws and then 1 main screw hole for the vise screw. I'm going to be mounting the end cap to the top assembly using these 6-inch lag screws. Now I have a drill press handy, so I'm going to use that, but you can use any drill here. Just make sure you keep that drill nice and plumb. You can use some double-sided tape to keep the end cap in place temporarily, and then transfer over the hole markings using the same drill bit. And then it's just a matter of drilling the rest of the holes in the end cap and routing the tracks for the rails. My sliding dog block is made from 3 laminated scrap pieces. My preferred method for drilling these dog holes is to use a plunge router with a 3/4 inch bit and also having a spade bit. You begin the hole with the plunge router and finish it with the spade bit if your plunge router cannot cut all the way through the top. Using a portable drill press like this can help to keep your drill nice and plumb. I'm just going to finish this line of dog holes so I can continue to use my tail vise, and I'll finish up the other dog holes later on. The bench dogs I'm using in this build are from Veritas. They're 3/4 by 4 3/8 inch deep, and they're made from solid brass. The next pieces to assemble are the legs. That's what one looks like when it's complete. Now all the legs are made up of the same pieces, but the locations of the mortises will differ from left to right. And you'll also have an additional mortise up top if you decided to build a split top like I did. So these 2 mortises are for the side stretchers, whereas this mortise down here is for the front stretcher, and it's easier to cut this before you assemble the leg using a saw or a jigsaw. The glue up is the same process, but I like to mark the mortises and avoid putting glue in that area. Once the legs are all glued up, you can clean up the edges by using a table saw or a plane. Then you can cut the side stretcher mortises using a combination of a drill and chisel, or you can use a router with an edge guide. It's also good to take a moment and fit the mortises and make sure everything fits nice and snug. Quick note on the leg vise: if you are installing one, it's best to do it now before you glue up the assembly. And if you want to install one later, you would then buy the retro version and leave this side blank. If you are installing the solo version, you will need a very long 3/8 inch drill bit to get through there. And I've already gone ahead and done the details on the leg side, including this mortise. So now I'm gonna work my way onto this chop here, turning this block of wood into what's gonna be the receiving side of this, the chop. I'm not going to go into any great detail on how to mount the leg vise assembly, as there are plenty of great videos on this topic already, and this installation is no different. So I have the side stretcher assembly just clamped together here temporarily so that I can make all the mortises and holes for the leg vise and ensure everything is working nice and smoothly. Next, we're gonna build 2 assemblies just like this, which is the stretchers, side stretchers, and the legs. I have all my parts glued up for this second side assembly, and I've done a lot of fine chisel work to make sure that all of the mortise and tenon joints fit nice and snug. Be sure to do a dry assembly and make sure everything fits as you would like it to, and once you're happy with it, you can go ahead and glue everything up. With all the parts for the base glued up, some final adjustments are made to the mortise and tenon joints to ensure a good fit. Then I did one last dry assembly before attempting perhaps the most important glue up of the entire build. At this point, I can level the top of the bench, square up the ends, and drill all the remaining dog holes. So when it comes to sealing and protecting your workbench, you do not have to go all out on the finish, as this isn't a piece of furniture, but I want to do something, so I'm going to use what Chris Schwarz recommends, which is 1 equal part of spar urethane, boiled linseed oil, and mineral spirits, or paint thinner in this case, because that's what I have. The major benefit of sealing your workbench this way is that it becomes a lot easier to chip off old grime and glue. To be able to move this workbench around my shop, I picked up this caster kit, which is rated for 920 pounds. So at this point, the foundation of the bench is complete, and we can move on to some of the options and accessories. Let's start by building the configurable tool chest, which doesn't require any additional hardware, and it can be opened from either side. The cabinet for my tool chest will consist of 2 dividers, 2 end pieces, a top, and a bottom. With the dividers all glued up, the drawer slide dados can be cut with either a dado blade on a table saw or by using a router and a guide. The cabinet can then be assembled. I prefer to use this doweling jig from Jessam to align the parts before clamping. Gluing and using wood screws as clamps works here as well, as long as you don't mind seeing the exposed screw heads. The next accessory we're going to work on is the sliding Deadman, which is an adjustable sliding support for working on long boards. The middle piece and the front piece have already been glued up, and the rear part will be screwed in from behind, so I'll have to take the tool chest out in order to install it. The next step here is to pre-drill all of the mounting holes in the back piece, then you can drill all of the dog holes all the way through. Then we can do a test installation and make sure that it slides nicely, and if it doesn't, you can always remove some material. The final accessory to complete this workbench is the removable gap stop. This can be flipped up into a planing stop and optionally provides a tool rest. I have all the pieces I need to build the gap stop right here, including these two outside pieces and the filler blocks, which can be cut from scraps, or they're also included in the workbench plans if you haven't cut them already. I'm also gonna use my pin nailer to temporarily hold the filler blocks in place before applying clamps. With all of the accessories complete, I figure now is a good time to upgrade my floors with these rubber mats and put on the crubber which comes with the bench vises. So I've actually had this bench completed and built for over a year now while I was developing and releasing PlanCrafted. I've built a number of projects on it and it's been a complete workhorse and it's accumulated some battle scars. So I'm gonna get into some final thoughts on my workbench that may help you in speccing out your workbench. There's no doubt that the bench-crafted Tailvices take the utility of this bench to the next level. They can be quite expensive, especially if you splurge on the machined options. They do make the build quite a bit more involved, but they can also be retrofit later on. If I had to pick only one vise, I would choose the Tailvice. I find it just so versatile, especially for sanding and detail work, and I'm constantly using it. It's also a lot more difficult to retrofit than the leg vise. I still do use the leg vise and it pairs well with the sliding Deadman for working on long-edged boards, but if you skip the leg vise, you might as well skip the sliding Deadman. I'm really indifferent about the split top design. I find having the dog holes gives you just so many different clamping options. I think it looks cool, but most of the time my gap stop is left in. I have never used a holdfast before using this bench. They work amazing. They're straightforward to use. You just hammer them down to fasten your workpiece, tap them on the side to release them, and I use them all the time. There are tons of existing products out there on the market that work with dog holes, including these ratcheting hold downs. I would not skip drilling the dog holes as they're essentially free and they're super useful. The tool chest works great and adds minimal cost. We give you a few options for tailoring this feature. The only thing you want to watch out for is you want to leave some room in case you want to use hold downs or things that poke through the dog holes in the future. We've tried to make this plan as customizable as possible for PlanCrafted's first official plan, but there's always room for improvements. These plans are designed to be updated and fixed based on your feedback. So if you have any suggestions, reach out here in the comments section or via our contact form on our website. Thanks for watching. See you next time.